who are willing to stand up against it. And in so doing, so often overcome it. Earlier today, we were at this place called Southwest Key. And you may or may not know what it does. It's they call it a shelter. It's essentially a detention center for children who've been apprehended at the United States-Mexico border, children who in some cases were separated from their parents with whom they arrived, and let's put ourselves in their shoes as well, after a 2,000-mile journey, leaving the deadliest countries on the face of the planet today. Amy and I have tried to think through this one. What would cause us to travel 2,000 miles with Ulysses and Molly and Henry? Or even worse, what would cause us to put them in the hands of a smuggler or a coyote? The only way we would do this, if it was the only way we could save their lives, right? If there were no other choice left to us. So that's what those kids have just experienced on this journey, that god-awful decision to come here in the first place. And then at their most desperate and vulnerable moment, we capture them, we cage them, we turn them over to people who hold them indefinitely without any hope or prospect of seeing their parents or their families again, strangers in a strange land who do not speak the language that their guards speak, may not even speak Spanish, may speak some indigenous language in Central America. Imagine how frightened you or your child would be in that same situation. No transparency at Southwest Key. We have no ability to enter and see how those kids are being kept. We don't know what happens when they turn 18 and age out of that center. Are they turned over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement and sent back to the very country from which they fled in the first place? Does something else happen to them? We do not know. And yet, earlier today, under the broiling Houston sky, there were more than 150 people who showed up to bear witness, to testify back to the rest of the country about what was being done in our name. It's a very similar scene that we saw in Homestead, Florida. There are 2,600 kids in a military-style camp. We were able to peer over the wall. It looked like a scene from a World War II movie in a POW camp. Kids kept in these tents, again, kept indefinitely, and furthermore, prevented from being able to have any kind of human contact with other kids, including siblings who are kept with them at the same time. I cannot imagine the torture that visits on those kids, the damage that we are doing to them, and how long it will take them to recover from that. But it's not just happening in those two places. Tomorrow, and you're welcome to join me if you can still get on a flight to El Paso tonight. We're going to be in this little community called Clint, Texas. It's in El Paso County. It's home to a Border Patrol station, which has been housing children in the most inhumane conditions possible. The Associated Press, the New York Times have reported on this extensively. Somehow the Trump administration does not think that it has to provide diapers for toddlers, toothpaste, toothbrushes, or soap for the kids who are detained to be able to clean themselves. You have little toddlers, 7, 8 months old, being cared for by 7, 8-year-old children who are no way related to them. Those kids so often shitting on the floor because they don't have diapers, and those same kids who are taking care of them sleeping on that same concrete floor under aluminum blankets in the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the earth today in 2019. And it's not just happening there either. We actually don't know how many places this is happening. A good friend of mine in El Paso, Bob Moore, put this in perspective for me. He said, this is the largest mass incarceration of children who have not committed a crime in the history of the United States, with the exception of the internment of Japanese and Japanese Americans during World War II. And whenever this comes up in a U.S. history class, whenever it comes up in conversation at an event like this, all of us to a person say, you know, if I was alive in 1941, 1942, there's no way in hell that I would have stood for that. Who were those people in America back then? What were they thinking? We have since officially, as a country, apologized for what we did, and yet we're doing this to these kids right now. 7 children have died in custody of the United States government just over the course of the last year. Some of them we only found out about because the press, through their inquiries, through their innovation, through their relentless pursuit of justice, the truth, and the facts, told us what was happening in our name. This is a moment of truth, if there ever was one, for this country. And we cannot wait until the next election, because the next president will not take office until January of 2021. How many minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years from that moment are we right now? So it's on us in this great democracy to force that change that we want to see. So again, the invitation to join us in Clint tomorrow, we're going to show up. We're going to hold vigil. We're going to witness what is happening in our name, and we're going to testify to our fellow Americans. We did something very similar to that last year on Father's Day in a tent camp called Tornillo, when they were tearing these kids apart from their parents in a zero-tolerance program that the Trump administration had just implemented. More than 1,000 of us showed up with 24 hours notice, and I think that helped to form the political will, the pressure for the administration to change that policy, at least temporarily and to some degree. We need that right now in this country at this moment. And my inspiration, my optimism comes from the folks who are willing to stand up and to do that, and not just in this detention archipelago, to quote Solzhenitsyn, talking about what was going on with the gulags in Russia that's happening right now in our country. It is the injustice of a healthcare system where we have people, was talking to Dr. Verma about this, dying of diabetes in the year 2019, 97 years after they invented insulin. 3 Canadian scientists sold it to the government of Canada for $3. 3 Canadian dollars at that. They just wanted to save people's lives. No hope or prospect of a patent or profit. Let's just help people. And right now, folks are rationing insulin if they can get it. They're having a hard time bridging their deductibles, meeting their co-pays. They're dying prematurely or leading diminished lives. We have more than enough resources to meet this challenge. It's just a question of the political will to meet this challenge right now. So whether it's our asylum laws and our inability to follow them, the way that we're treating these kids, the inability to offer health care to all so everyone's healthy enough to live to their full potential, this great economy that has failed to include so many millions of our fellow Americans, or something that you all know so well and taught me so much about when I came here in 2017. And that is the fact that climate change is not something for which we have to prepare, but is something that is knocking the socks off of Houston, Texas every single year. 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. Folks had not finished repairing from the last one before the next one hit. And those scientists that Peter has introduced me to have told us that these floods will only become more frequent, more severe, more profound, more devastating to property and to human life, and that we've got to change course while we still have time to act. But I know, just as in every other instance, there are really good people who are going to stand up and be counted at this moment of truth. And this campaign is all about bringing them in and together to make sure that we not only defeat Donald Trump, incredibly important, don't get me wrong, but it's got to be more than that. It's got to be bringing this very divided, highly polarized country back together again in common cause to pursue these common goals. It's the only way that we live up to our potential and fulfill our promise as a country. And I just wanted to share that with you because that is what drives me. That's what motivates me. That's why I'm here right now and not with Molly and Ulysses and Henry, because I know they're counting on all of us at this moment of truth. So thank you for being with us and being part of this, for the work that you've already done and for the work ahead. I am grateful. And one last note. One of the ways that they will judge the prospects for this campaign is the amount of money that we've been able to raise in this quarter. The last day of this quarter is tomorrow, midnight. If you can give a little bit more than you've already given, I promise you I will make the most of it.